Good morning, everyone, and welcome to what I hope is the first of many online webinars that we're hoping to host around the topic of supporting institutional effectiveness. I'm Alex Gay. I'm the Executive Director of Marketing for McGraw-Hill Enterprise and Services, and I wanted to take just a couple of minutes to introduce why we're doing this. We have a very packed day today with some fantastic speakers, faculty and administrators from across the country who have been looking at driving initiatives to help support institutional effectiveness in a number of different areas. And so I won't take up too much time. I really want them to engage and share their experiences so far with you. But just to preempt some of it, I want to tell you a little bit about the expectations of the day. So these are, most of the talks are led by faculty and administrators who have tried to tackle some of the challenges which I'm sure you face every day. So this is designed to be an engaging experience. Just to give you a little tour around the Inexpo platform, you should see an opportunity to write questions. And so I'd encourage you at any point during any of the talks to submit any questions that you think are relevant. Those won't appear directly. We'll have some Q&A at the end of the sessions, but essentially I'll be moderating the questions. I'll be able to order them. So as soon as our presenters finish speaking, they can address each and every one of your questions. And hopefully we'll have enough time for some back and forth so you get as much as possible from this webinar. To give you a little history as to why we're hosting this, so McGraw-Hill, for anyone that is unfamiliar, has a very long and storied history within the last 128 years, really transitioned from being part of some of the most widely used textbooks that are in the market to then being a pioneer within the digital space to try and transition from traditional print platforms to more digital learning and adaptive learning. So the acceleration within the digital space really happened about 5 years ago when we were acquired by Apollo Global Management, and they invested significantly in us trying to increase our capabilities within the adaptive learning space in particular. So acquisitions such as Area 9 and their Learn Smart platform, Alex and Ngrade as well, that's been predominantly within the K-12 space. They've invested significantly over the past few years to build up our capabilities there. And now our investment is around 180 million a year and trying to ensure that these digital platforms have the maximum impact on student outcomes. And we've really started to broaden our base with regards to the students that are using our platforms. And as you know, the more students that we have using the platforms, the better the platforms become. So with over 5.5 million learners using one of our adaptive platforms, these have really become incredibly intuitive systems that deliver really measurable outcomes. So we're really proud of what we've done so far, but this is just the beginning. And that really takes us to where we are today. The Enterprise and Services team is a new division within McGraw-Hill that was set up to address a couple of very large challenges. Our success within the course level and our adaptive learning products, we really wanted to scale to be able to address some much larger challenges. The major challenge that we see within the market is that there are a lot of students that are entering college, but far too few make it to sophomore year, even fewer graduate, and then an even smaller percentage start a career within a degree-related field. Now, for us, these statistics are ones that we think we can really help support and improve. Our capabilities within adaptive learning and what we've learned through learning science are really going to be solid foundations for platforms and services that we can help an institution use to really start to move the needle somewhat on trying to turn 7 sophomores into 8 sophomores or 3 graduates into 4 graduates. And we really hope that we'll be able to engage in some new and innovative ways to really try and move the needle on that front. But we want to focus on areas that we know we can deliver measurable impact. So if you look across the space, we really saw 3 areas where our core competencies would support things that you were trying to accomplish. And we're really going to focus in on those areas to be as strong as possible and be as powerful a partner with you as we can be in these areas. So focusing on preparation. From the moment that a student receives an application letter, how can we ensure that they have the best possible start to their college career? Then once they arrive on campus, how do we ensure that those freshmen become sophomores, that those sophomores make it to graduation? What tools can we put in place to help you really look at the data that's coming on a regular basis from the student activity and have targeted intervention to make sure that they have the best and most supportive experience possible. And then finally, career readiness. As we all know, there's an increasing divide between what employers look for in graduates and often what graduates arrive with, whether it's soft skills or more technical capabilities. So we want to be able to support and trying to bridge that gap through supporting curriculum redesign, through student portfolios and other measures. These are just a small sampling of the suite of services and products that we hope to build, and we hope to take that journey alongside you, because ultimately at the core of all of this is partnership. We want to discover exactly the unique needs that you have as an institution and figure out what combination of partnerships that we have or services and platforms that we have that can help get you to your institutional goals. So use today as an opportunity to explore a little further some of the ideas that you may have had, to discuss with your peers some ways that you could be implementing some of these initiatives. And really start to make some connections. The unfortunate reality of college life is that you become very closed in with your peers around you, and unfortunately that applies to a lot of us in this industry as well. So we want to use these as opportunities to engage with others outside of our normal day-to-day, broaden our perspective a little bit, and hopefully gain some new ideas that we can implement further forward. So we look forward to beginning a partnership with all of you, and that begins with conversations with your enterprise solutions directors or with ourselves. We'll certainly be present at events and conferences, and we'll look forward to engaging with you at a lot of those. But certainly contacting us on the back of conferences, our free webinars like this, will be another mechanism to begin the conversation. So without further ado, and I'm already running a little bit early, which I think is a positive thing, because as I mentioned, you don't want to hear from me, you want to hear from your peers. But we're going to be handing over in a couple of minutes to our keynote speaker. And I'm really excited about our keynote, mostly because we've been engaging very closely with this person for the past 6 months. All of the solutions that we do are designed to be research-based. We don't want to pursue anything which isn't robust and proven to deliver measurable outcomes. And so we've engaged with a lot of academic researchers to ensure that the direction that we're moving in is going to have those positive results. And our keynote speaker actually began working with us in that capacity. So Karen Ferguson serves as the assistant provost at CSU Global Campus. She's held a number of faculty and administrative positions in non-traditional higher education. She earned her PhD in educational leadership and organizational development from the University of Louisville after serving 12 years in the military. She's worked on federal and state grants and serves as an Army Research Institute doctoral fellow as well. Her research interests and passions include student success, retention, and workforce performance, which is why there was such a close-knit, such a close relationship with what we were trying to accomplish. So as a non-traditional student herself, Karen's dedicated to ensuring that the quality of education for students of all backgrounds and all academic abilities is equal. So as I said, I've had the pleasure of working with Karen on generating primary and secondary research into retention primarily, and her work has been a major driving force in our understanding of the space, the complexities of the challenges, and the role that our core competencies could play in delivering meaningful results. I can honestly say that every solution and service that we develop and provide will in some way have been informed by the terrific research that Karen's undertaken so far. So running about 30 seconds early, but I think at this point it is time for me to hand over to Dr. Karen Ferguson. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alex. I appreciate that introduction. And I am very happy to be here as well, just talking about something that we are all so passionate about. Let's see. 'Cause, 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 Okay, thank you. I think we are back on track, and I apologize for that. I'm just very honored to be here today to talk to you guys about student success and something that is near and dear to my heart and something that I've spent a lot of time looking into, as I'm sure most of you have as well. So the first thing I want to do before we get started is just ask you, think as to why are you here? Not just why are you here today, but why are you here in this field? Why are you in the field of education, either as a vendor or a provider or an educator? What brought you to this space? And as you think about that, I kind of want to share a story with you that does take me back to that past that Alex talked about, where once upon a time I was in the lab field, and I was asked to go into a specific part of our lab that wasn't performing well. The turnaround times weren't good. There was a lack of relationships between the lab techs and the physicians and the other care providers. And it was my responsibility to go in and find out why the laboratory wasn't performing well. And it was interesting to just sit back and watch and pay attention to what was going on. And I could see that the techs were very capable. I could see that they were passionate about their work and they cared about what they were doing. But for some reason, they still weren't making turnaround times. So we finally sat down and we had a conversation after watching for a while. And I just started asking questions. Why is this happening? Why are we making these, not necessarily errors, but not making these benchmarks? And a lot of the feedback that I got was, well, that doctor, fill in the blank. Either the doctor didn't order the test correctly, or the sample wasn't prepared right. Any number of reasons that all dealt with their relationship with their physicians or the nurses. So we continued to probe and have those conversations over time, and we started talking about who do you work for? Who are your customers? And the answers that came back were, they work for their leadership team, or they work for the doctors, or they work for the nurses. And it took a while, and I think finally I asked the right question, which is, who do you serve? Do you serve the physicians, or do you serve the patients? And that was really, I think, the turning point for us in that area. And we turned things around, because suddenly the relationships and the things that may have been getting in the way of good customer service or good patient care, in the moment we finally realized that it wasn't about the physician, it wasn't about the nurse, it was about the name on the sample, it was about the patient. Because at the end of the day, we all have internal customers, we have external customers. We're a very customer-focused society, and you hear that a lot, customer service. And it's important to understand that while we do have all of these internal customers, when you think about all of the different roles in higher education, we all serve multiple stakeholders. But at the end of the day, we really have to ask, who do we serve? And hopefully it is your leadership. Hopefully it is your customers. Hopefully it's your stakeholders. But at the end of the day, are we serving our students? And are we serving our students in the best possible way? So today I'm not going to share a lot of stats with you. I think you're all acutely aware of the trends going on in higher education. Alex shared a few when he started this morning. So I don't think we need to talk about the barriers. I don't think we need to talk about the trends. But I would like to share with you some thoughts on removing those barriers, helping us as institutions and providers achieve our organizational goals, and in such a way that we're also achieving and helping students achieve their goals. So the first thing I'd like to do is just talk about defining success and how we may define success as an institution or a provider different than students define success. So in a data-driven society like we live in today, we are all measuring retention, we're measuring persistence, graduation rates, completion time. Based on your institution's mission and vision, you probably have other metrics that you use to define success. But what we also have to ask ourselves is, how are students defining success? In some ways, those are the same things. Retention and persistent and graduation rates for them means that they're graduating. They may be looking at GPA. They may be looking at their overall experience and how it feels to go to school. Or they could be looking at job placement or promotion. So as we go through and we talk about student success, I think it's important that we understand not just how we as institutions or academic leaders define success, but how are our students defining success? And are we encompassing those definitions in our definitions and matrix? So what you see here is the PERQ model, which is just a model that really puts students at the center of the retention model. So, we want to put students first, expand that definition of success, make sure we're taking a systematic view, and then use data to inform all of the decisions and measure all of the results. So when we think about all of these components, which you'll see on the screen, and we'll go through all of these in a little bit more detail, but prepared students, engaged faculty, support systems, quality curriculum, hopefully in the middle of that, right, surrounded by all of these data points and all of these things that we use to inform our decisions, is the environment that we work in and the capabilities that students bring in, the capabilities that the institution has, and then all of those data points. So, there's 4 main components of this model, but we want to talk a lot about, how do we look at this as a continuous improvement cycle in addition to a retention model? And how do we look at student readiness, student performance, this curriculum, and then faculty? So that's a little bit about what we're going to talk about over the next few minutes. Okay, so student preparedness. I think you can look at that picture and hopefully know which student is the best, student that's most likely to succeed at your institution. And I think we probably need to decide, do we want Jill or do we want Mandy? And that would be a nice position to be in. But when we look at access to education, we really need to consider how can we prepare Mandy to be a little bit more like Jill. And when we think about student preparedness, I think, sometimes we get stuck in academic preparedness, and that's a very important concept. I don't want to not focus on that part of it, but there's a lot more to being prepared for the college experience than the academic piece. So one of the things that you might want to look at is, are they prepared for the pace? Do they have the time or the time management skills? Are they prepared for the change in priorities that they might face, especially for our non-traditional students, those returning, who might have families and jobs, who might have parents that they're taking care of? What life skills do they have, and what other additional support do they need in order to be successful? So we really want to know, are they ready academically? Are they ready in life? And then, just like anything else, sometimes we don't know what we don't know. So as those who have gone through the process, what do we know they need to succeed that they may not be aware of? And how can we build those structures into our systems so that support for our students is seamless? Okay, so the next one you see here is engaged faculty. And I used engaged and engaging. Those clearly have very different definitions, but that's really what we're looking for from our faculty. Not only have students changed, but the way we teach, how we teach, where we teach has changed. And to a certain extent, that does require a slightly different faculty engagement model. So it could be, that you're right there next to your students and you're explaining concepts. It could be that your students are completely across the country and you're using different technologies to engage with them. But one of the most important ways we can engage with our students is to really provide them the feedback that they need, so that we're again, it's kind of that continuous model where we're explaining the concepts, engaging with them, being available for them, and then making sure that they're getting that continuous feedback loop. So with as much as education has changed, we really need to consider, how can we make sure that our faculty are accessible? How do we make it easy for students to know how to reach their faculty, to ask questions? If we're in the online environment, sometimes that time and space puts a false barrier between students and faculty. So how do we break down those barriers so that they can ask those questions? Creating a situation where our faculty are humanized. We all know we're human. I think sometimes it's easy to forget that for students, especially those who maybe this isn't their first attempt at school, maybe they haven't been successful in the past, that they can be intimidated and uncomfortable and just feel generally uneasy. So finding ways to really humanize that experience and making sure that especially those first generation students or those who haven't been successful in the past aren't intimidated by the system, aren't intimidated by their faculty, and are comfortable reaching out and engaging with their faculty in tons of different ways, whether that's video like what we're doing today, or text or phone calls or in person based on your model. It's just really important for students to understand how they can engage with those faculty and then make sure that the faculty are engaged with their students. You know, there's tons and tons of research out there that shows a relationship between the influence that faculty can have on student success. There's a lot of different educational models out there. I know we rely heavily on advising to sometimes be that first line of support. But I think if we really think about it, it's the faculty who know when students aren't attending. It's the faculty who can see when students reduce their performance or start to struggle, or a student that's been present for 3 or 4 weeks doing well all of a sudden falls off the radar. So those are things that then the faculty can engage with the student, but then also engage with the institution through early alert systems and different ways to really make sure that they're part of wrapping their arms around the students and helping them with success. Okay, so the next thing is resources and support. This is the next part of the model. You know, I think it's really easy when we think of resources and support to think about academic resources. We do absolutely need to make sure our libraries are good. We have tons of resources for students to do their work, that there's tutoring available. All of those very traditional academic support functions continue to be very important. But it's also important to understand how else can we keep them engaged in their learning. And some of those ways are making sure that they're able to apply their learning in such a way that they can see where it's going to matter in the future, whether that's, you know, career guidance or career coaching. Oftentimes, some of our students need life coaching to a certain extent. You know, if you think about the traditional model and that residence life, there's something to that mentored experience that a lot of very traditional students have had in their freshman year. So thinking about ways that in any model we can learn from those things and apply, whether it's life coaching or time management, technical skills. Is there a way to offset costs of daycare or provide daycare if you have a physical campus, and different funding opportunities for students? You know, you see sometimes students who are using tuition reimbursement or employer pay. There's a limit to what they're allowed to use in a year, and finding ways for students to finance those gaps so that they don't have to slow down, because we do know in research, based off of research, that if they slow down or they stop out for a short period of time, our likelihood of getting them back on track is reduced. So finding different ways to make sure that we're filling those gaps for our students becomes very important as well. Okay, so the next is a quality curriculum. You know, and I don't think just to touch on this real quickly too, none of these things are independent of one another. You know, this is really a kind of a systems perspective, because I think we all know that you can't really have a high quality curriculum without a very well engaged faculty. You know, when we put those two things together, those are the things that really lead to student learning. So as I'm going through this, if I didn't mention kind of that systematic view of that, I apologize for that. So I just kind of wanted to touch on that for a second, especially as we get into curriculum, because we really want to make sure that students are engaged in their learning. And one of the ways that we can do that is through innovative ways of providing them with curriculum. So we want to make sure it's relevant, it's engaging, that it's adaptive. And, you know, not just in the traditional sense of these adaptive learning tools that within a course might adapt to different performance levels of students and provide different learning tracks, but is it adaptive from a program level? Are there multiple ways to enter into a program and multiple ways to be successful in a program? Are students able to mix and match competency-based or prior learning with more traditional curriculum, or testing out features or internships or externships, and really experience the curriculum? So this part, I think, is very complex, not that any of it's simple, but how we engage our students in their learning experience through the use of these creative tools, I think, is going to become increasingly more important as our student body continues to change. So we need to make sure that our curriculum is really meeting that student need, and that it's really assisting in student learning in such a way that students have that buy-in and feel like they have a sense of control over so again, we just really want to make sure that not only are we using those learning principles that we all know so well, and that we're using good design principles, but we're also giving students some sense of ownership and control over the way they enter their programs. Because if they have that level of buy-in and they know that they can engage with their curriculum in such a way that they can apply it in their workplace immediately, and they can start to see that result, or that they know how that's going to work along the way, they tend to be much more engaged in the learning process, and the more engaged they are, the less likely they are to stop out. Okay, so the result, what are we all working towards? And this gets back to kind of those definitions that we talked about earlier. But from an institution, we're really looking for those improved retention rates. We all want to improve our graduation and our completion rates and build that really strong reputation that comes with our students being successful. Students, when we look at all of these different inputs into retention, if we can find that way to have that holistic student-centered approach, hopefully they can have an improved GPA. We can have more of them, like Alex talked about earlier today, reaching graduation, getting job placement, and hopefully promotion potential. So what we really want to consider is that when we put the students in the center, what are all of the different inputs? What do students bring to the table? What do our faculty bring to the table? The curriculum, and then what other resources and support can we use just to continue to build students up so that they can have the experience that they deserve, and then earn that education so that they can go into our workforce and be successful. So before I close out, I just want to kind of ask you to take a second and look at those fireworks for just a minute. I was thinking the other day, kind of a symbol that goes with student success. And I used to live in Louisville, Kentucky, and we have Thunder over Louisville to kick off the Derby Festival, and it's one of the largest fireworks displays. And one thing my favorite fireworks are the ones that go up, and then from the middle bursts out all of this light. And I kind of think of our students that way. They're that little ball of light that goes up into the sky, and when the environment is just right, and when the situations are correct, they can explode into these beautiful rays of light. And how can we then help our students reach that grand finale? How can we create a larger grand finale so that we have more fireworks in the sky? What can we do as leaders, as educators, as providers, to make sure that the environment is right for our students to just really take off and succeed and continue to build our society? So, Alex, did you want me to take any questions, or did you want to go ahead and transition back?
So thanks for that, Karen. There was one question that came from Christopher Hitchu, who asked, how can we assist adjunct faculty in being more engaged with the students, especially when technology is a challenge for the faculty member? So Karen, I don't know if you want to tackle that one.
Actually, I do. I love that question because we do see a lot more adjunct faculty in different models as well, even in traditional education. So I think there's a number of different ways, but the number one to me is making sure that the faculty is engaged with the university. The more adjunct faculty feel like they're truly a part of the mission and that there's a lot of transparency and a lot of buy-in into that mission, then it becomes much easier for them to be an extension of that, because then they're part of the institution. And there are some ways to do that, and a lot of that is related back to culture, making sure that, I personally don't use the term adjunct faculty, because adjunct comes with a certain type of connotation. To me, that sends the message that you're kind of over here. I refer to all of my adjunct faculty as part-time faculty, because they are just as influential in my student success as a full-time faculty, and they bring different experiences. So I think really making sure that they're part of an institution and they're not this body over here, and then providing them with the training and making sure they understand the mission, setting clear expectations for faculty. And I know that can be an uncomfortable conversation, because it's not about academic freedom, but it's about setting the expectations and providing training for faculty, especially new faculty, on how to really meet students where they are and bring them where they want to go. So having a certain level of expectations for timeliness, for responses, for feedback, and making sure that we're engaged with those faculty along the way and supporting them to help us accomplish our mission and help students succeed.
Perfect. So we have another question, a follow-up from that, from Joseph Kahn. How will you get adjuncts to commit time to develop in areas of retention when most have full-time jobs as well?
So let's write a book together. No, another great question. And I think that it really gets into how, I think, the culture of adjunct faculty within your institution. So they do all have, well, I won't say they all do, but a lot of them do have additional responsibilities. Hopefully, if we're hiring properly, though, those additional responsibilities are in the field that they're teaching. So there's this kind of smooth transition, perhaps, into maybe doing accounting during the day and teaching accounting at night. But you can also be creative and find different ways to recognize and reward your adjunct faculty, and not necessarily in a financial way, but just providing some level of gratitude and recognition at graduation ceremonies or at different meetings or events, and recognizing. So you're using more of a carrot, recognizing their contributions publicly, and really, again, getting them engaged in the institution and making them feel bought into that mission. They're less likely than to disengage in the process.
All right. I have a question from Zeke Ellis. Students are absent when they feel they will receive more value from the absence than from the attendance. You've addressed our piece of increasing value for the student, but student priorities are a key factor. Any advice on helping them adjust their priorities for success?
I think a lot of that it can be done through that ongoing coaching. Advising models differ at different institutions. But adapting an advising model that does that proactive outreach to students, and that falls under that resources and support, and I really did not hit on that earlier, but making sure that we have certain touch points with students and have those conversations with them, so that academic advising is not simply what's the next course that you take in your sequence or how can I help you with your financial aid. All of those things are important, but how are things going? What's in your way? And I think, building in an alert system like we touched on earlier, but ways for faculty to alert advisors, ways for advisors to alert faculty that something might be going on with a student, so that we can have those conversations. And sometimes it really can just be a simple conversation to say, what's going on in your life? Okay, how can you reprioritize what's going on in your day so that you still have time for homework? And helping students problem solve through different either workshops on time management or through that advising model, providing some sense of life coaching there, or any other type of support that's outside of that support. So you have that ongoing kind of reminder of why we're doing what we're doing. What is your end goal? And if it's perhaps the children that are starting to, I don't want to say get in the way, but get in the way of getting homework done, I've been there, then reminding our students that it's also those children that we're doing this work for, so that you can accomplish what you want to accomplish for them. So whatever their drivers are, making sure that we're tying their activities back to those drivers. And there are ways to do that in the enrollment process so that we understand, we can collect that data on the front end to understand why students are even here. Why are they working towards their degree, and capturing that in the student information system so that the advisors are equipped with what's motivating the student and any potential, all of those readiness scores, assessing those different life factors as they're coming into their programs, so that then the advisors are equipped with the information to have those conversations with students, not just in the beginning of their studies, but throughout the studies.
Right. If anyone has any additional questions, please feel free to put them in the chat box. I had a question for you, Karen. For anyone that's here that's interested in exploring additional information, that's looking for additional sources of inspiration within these areas, what are some places that you found that have been particularly good sources of info?
That's a great question. I can actually share a lengthy annotated bibliography, or at least a list of references based off of the research. A lot of what informs the work that we do today, it still goes back to, Metzger and Bean back in the 70s. Even though it was a very traditional model, and they looked a lot at, the social structures and the academic preparedness, those concepts still apply today. So, there's the research base. I've also been inspired by the work that's been done out of some of the foundation work from Microsoft. A lot of those models are focused specifically for community colleges, but talking about the momentum and the loss framework, those things we can extrapolate how those models then fit into perhaps what our model is, and really understanding where students come through. So there are actually quite a few resources out there, a lot of research out there, and then different vendors continue to conduct research on their tools. So based off of, if you're looking at readiness, or if you're looking at adaptive technologies, based off of kind of those priorities, I get a lot of their case studies back, and a lot of the different information that they do working with their different partners. They'll share that with most anyone. And you can see the different ways that perhaps assessing readiness can be done in so many different ways, and reading through these case studies can help us see how does it look different based off of institution type and mission, and how can we apply that then to our institutions.
Excellent. Good thought-provoking question here from Joseph Kahn. Our students are getting jobs in their first year of our programs. But it's becoming a problem when they earn wages they've never had before. This leads to retention problems. How do we get employers to set a conditional completion of their degrees for employment, or do we wait and see after trying to motivate them with the value of education? Which approach would you use?
Wow, both. If you have partners that, if you're placing students in their first year and these are the partners of the institution, then I would definitely try that partnership aspect that, even if they don't go as far as a conditional, that it's something that's continuously brought up in their performance evaluations or their quarterly performance check-ins based on, how those organizations might do that. But to see if you can partner with the organization, and I'm not exactly sure what type of institution you are, but even if it's that you guys come to the work site and provide advising, similar to a four-year institution, providing advising at a community college and coming down to recruit those students into the four-year program, it might be an option for you to then go into that workplace and make sure that you have a presence there, if you have, only a handful of employers or if you have certain sites. But then the similar thing, that very proactive advising model, moving out of that reactive model, but then absolutely tracking that data so that then you can inform new students based off of your existing data so that you can have those conversations that say, we're really happy that you're in this position and we're glad that you're able to pursue your career. These are some of the challenges that students who have followed the same path have had. And let's talk through then how we can make sure that we can remove those barriers for you and keep you focused not only on your career but on your education and understanding the long-term consequences of stopping out of either one of them. So to me, it sounds like something that would be solved best by really going at it from both directions and making sure that you're having conversations throughout that pipeline.
We have a question from Una Berman. Something we have struggled with in our 100 level courses. In the classroom, how do you balance the fact that students are new to the college environment and they may not be familiar with ownership of their learning, but still enculture them in this since they will need to know this for future success at the college level? At what point do we stop saying these are freshmen and are so young and new to college and start saying these are college students?
I think that's a great question that a lot of institutions struggle with. And I think that it's a lot of that can be, I don't know if you have a first year experience or what type of I don't want to say onboarding, but orientation or anything like that you do. But sometimes that can be handled on the front end so that you're setting those clear expectations and then providing a defined period of mentoring. So maybe the first, depending on how long your semesters are, maybe the first half of the semester, there is a lot of hand-holding, but it's clearly explained in the beginning that, okay, we're going to slowly step away, and by December, the expectation is that you're performing at this level. But just setting those expectations, having those transparencies, and then helping students figure out what they need along the way. There's the very traditional physical orientation. There's also programs out there that provide orientation as needed throughout the first year, so that different modules get pushed out to students at different times on anything from financial aid and what does SAP mean, just the different logistical pieces of being a student and paying for education and attending your education, all the way to time management. So we can scaffold those skills in ways that aren't always necessarily in the classroom as well, but are threaded throughout perhaps that first semester or that first year, and not bound by time at the beginning of a program when students are often very overwhelmed and may not be retaining the information that you're sharing with them.
So thank you. So we have another question from Shelley Tawari. Many students transfer without completing degrees and don't see the value in actually earning an associate's degree before transferring to a four-year institution. Any advice on how to address this issue?
I think that's one of the ones that's best addressed through data and through conversation. So if you can collect data, especially if you have institutional data, because that can be a little bit more personal for students, but sharing with them whether it's salary data or their time to completion data at the four-year degree point, anything where you can show them very quantifiably some different paths and the consequences for those different paths, whether it's a good consequence or a negative consequence. But if you can show them that, hey, if you stop out at this point, then data suggests that the likelihood that you're going to finish in this many years is this percentage. But if you go ahead and complete your associate's degree, the likelihood of transfer at another institution is higher, and then it's more likely that you're going to complete your degree and accomplish your long-term goals. But I think anytime you can tell those stories about what has happened and what other students have experienced, it's a context for students to use, because they don't have the context themselves just yet. You know, they aren't there yet, and sometimes it's hard to know what the future holds and what that decision might look like a couple of years from now. So if we can tell that story by using institutional data and other analytics, then sometimes that makes it a little more personal for students, and they can identify with that just a little bit more.
Perfect. All right. Well, thanks very much for all of the great questions. This session will be available as a recording as soon as, pretty much as soon as it ends, and you'll be able to watch it again and also distribute to anyone that you think would benefit from seeing it. We've got a great day of sessions to continue. In 25 minutes, we'll have a session that focuses on using a data aggregation platform to support retention outcomes, which is something that Karen touched on a number of times during the talk, and you will be excited to explore in a bit more depth with one of our customers from Odessa College. So feel free to take a short break, and we will see you back here at 9 o'clock Pacific, 12 o'clock Eastern, to continue the conversation around retention. But I'd like to take this opportunity to say a very big thank you to Karen Ferguson for what I thought was an incredibly compelling talk, and the slides will be available to download as well after the session. We'll be able to distribute those out in addition to the recording. So Karen, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for all the great questions as well.